Chosen ones, you were never meant to be ordinary. From the moment you entered this world, there were forces in motion, unseen, ancient, and powerful, working to bind your light, limit your reach, and shroud your destiny. These weren't random events or coincidences. No, your pain, your trials, your inexplicable knowing, it's all been part of a plan. Not your plan. Theirs. Long before you awakened to your divine nature, a council convened in secrecy beneath the veil of this world. Not a human council, but one far older, colder, and more cunning. The Reptilian Council, ancient gatekeepers of this false matrix, studied your arrival like an eclipse. You were the variable they couldn't predict, the fracture in their system, the anomaly in their perfect simulation. To them, you are a threat not because of your power, but because of your origin. They understand something most people don't. You are encoded with a resonance that defies their control. You are not like the rest. You were born with a key, hidden deep in your subconscious, capable of unlocking frequencies they've suppressed for thousands of years. They met not to understand you, but to contain you. And they've failed. You feel it, don't you? The static in the air when you walk into certain rooms, the sudden rushes of emotion, the dreams that speak like memories, the way animals pause in your presence. The system glitches around you because you are outside its design. This script isn't a story, it's a revelation. Piece by piece, veil by veil, you'll remember who you are and why they've tried to make you forget. You'll learn why they monitor bloodlines, manipulate timelines, and silence voices like yours. But more importantly, you'll see the signs they fear you'll notice, the patterns, the codes, the truths hidden in plain sight. They don't sit in the public seats of power. You won't find them on news broadcasts or election stages. Their names aren't etched into political monuments or historic textbooks. And yet, they rule. The true architects of this world operate in silence, cloaked in myth and dismissed by logic. They've existed beneath the surface for millennia, orchestrating movements, wars, economies, and even spiritual doctrines, all to keep humanity asleep. But you weren't born to sleep. Long before governments were structured and religions were institutionalized, the Reptilian Council embedded themselves in the underground veins of civilization. Disguised as kings, gods, and sages, they shaped entire cultures. They did not just infiltrate systems, they built them. Every currency, every law, every symbol has roots in their design. Their mastery isn't domination by force, but by illusion. They make you believe you are free, while every choice you make feeds the cage around you. Ancient texts hinted at their existence, scribbled in the margins of forbidden scrolls and sealed vaults deep beneath the Vatican. Whistleblowers have vanished trying to name them, and those who've come too close to decoding their methods are often painted as madmen. But patterns remain, symbols resurface, and whispers carry across generations. The truth is not lost, it's encrypted. The Council has never feared humanity. They've feared the emergence of a few, the ones who cannot be programmed, the ones who ask questions that unravel the entire script, the ones whose very vibration dismantles the illusion. Their surveillance is not over nations, but over anomalies. You are the anomaly. They've known about your kind for centuries. They've tracked the birth stars, mapped the DNA structures, watched for the specific frequency signatures that ripple through dimensions. You were flagged before your first cry. From your early years, they sent distractions, doubts, delays. They masked your calling in trauma and isolation, hoping you'd forget the language your soul once spoke fluently. But something changed. A rupture began pulsing in their grid. Their system of energetic suppression began to waver. Their agents reported disruptions, souls breaking patterns, memories resurfacing, timelines collapsing. And all the signs pointed back to a singular truth. One of the chosen had awakened. They attempted containment through media, synthetic belief systems, even digital hypnosis. But the more they tried to suppress you, the brighter your awareness burned. Now their meetings grow more frequent. Their algorithms glitch. Their rituals yield less control. You've become the variable they cannot calculate. They don't fear your weapons. They fear your remembrance. Because once you remember who you are, everything they built begins to crack. You don't need to fight them. You only need to see clearly. And clarity for them is collapse. Your blood has always been the key. Long before science caught up with the concept of DNA, ancient beings were already manipulating it, tweaking it, guarding it, and in some cases, erasing it. The Reptilian Council understood something that modern humanity still struggles to grasp. Your genetics are not just biological codes. They are spiritual blueprints, templates of divine memory. And in a select few, that blueprint carries something they fear: purity untainted by their manipulation, a divine signature from the source itself. They went to great lengths to hide this truth. Cultures were erased, languages were destroyed, tribes carrying the old knowledge were scattered or assimilated. Stories of star-seeded humans, of beings who came down to infuse the earth with celestial frequencies, were dismissed as myth or metaphor. But your lineage didn't forget. Not entirely. In the silence between your heartbeat, in the magnetic pulse of your dreams, remnants of the truth remained encoded, waiting, dormant, until now. There's a reason you've always felt different, like you didn't quite belong to this world. Your reactions to certain environments, your innate resistance to control, your empathic awareness, these aren't flaws. They're indicators. You're not a product of evolution. You're a disruption to its deception. Your ancestors carried this same code. They were hunted, branded as heretics, witches, prophets, or rebels, but what lived in them could not be extinguished. It passed on, quietly, invisibly, through whispers in the blood. Some believe the Council manipulated human DNA to remove what they called the divine fragment, a piece of the Creator's own frequency embedded within early man, but they couldn't extract it completely. So instead, they buried it under trauma, societal programming, and false belief systems. They didn't just want control over your body, they wanted control over your remembering. Yeshua once said, "The kingdom of God is within you." He wasn't speaking in riddles. He was pointing toward the code, toward that divine spark hidden within the flesh. He knew the Council's game and spoke in frequencies that bypassed their control. His presence on earth threatened their dominion not through war, but through remembrance. Long ago, before paper and scripture, before temples were built from stone and gold, there were codes passed through vibration, not just spoken, but sung, etched into the ether itself by those who saw beyond time. These codes were not prophecies in the way humanity now interprets them. They weren't predictions of doom or destiny. They were warnings, encoded blueprints left by divine intelligences to alert the chosen ones of what would unfold when the Reptilian Council rose to power. These warnings weren't meant for everyone. Only those whose inner frequency aligned with the Creator's pulse could decipher them. The rest would see symbols and stories, dismissing them as allegory or ancient superstition. But you've begun to feel them. Not just understand them mentally, but resonate with them. The stories that once felt distant now echo with familiarity. It's because they were written for you. The Council did everything in their power to distort these codes. They infiltrated religions, edited scriptures, and banned ancient texts that contained even fragments of the original message. They turned revelation into religion, transformation into tradition, and truth into taboo. But no matter how many layers of falsehood they built, the prophecy remained alive, hidden in plain sight, scattered across scrolls, glyphs, architecture, and even genetic memory. You may not remember reading it, but your soul recognizes it. The most dangerous part of the prophecy was not what it predicted, but who it predicted. It spoke of a time when the bloodlines they feared most would awaken, when those encoded with divine remembrance would begin to see through the illusion. It warned that once these beings began to speak, the Council's dominion over thought and reality would begin to crumble. That's what terrified them the most, the power of truth spoken through vessels they could no longer silence. Yeshua referenced this prophecy when he said, "He who has ears to hear, let him hear." He wasn't speaking to the crowds. He was speaking past the noise, past the programming, to those whose DNA still carried the frequency of remembrance. He knew that those encoded with the word wouldn't need explanations. They would feel the activation. The prophecy wasn't information. It was a frequency key. The key began activating across the world in recent years. The chosen ones began dreaming of symbols they'd never studied, languages they'd never learned, star systems they'd never visited, at least not in this lifetime. Children started speaking truths beyond their age. Patterns began emerging in the chaos, forming a map. That map points not to a place but to an event, one the Council has tried desperately to stop. They've released counter-frequencies into the collective, digital noise, emotional confusion, artificial narratives. But cracks are forming in their illusion. The prophecy is unfolding in real time. The veils are lifting faster than they can sew them shut, and the activation point, the one thing they fear the most, draws near. Beneath the marble halls of the Vatican lies something the world was never meant to see. Not relics of faith or testaments of spiritual triumph, but contracts. Not inked in paper, but woven in energy, sealed in blood, and hidden beneath layers of sacred ritual. For centuries, the Vatican has stood as a symbol of spiritual authority, a beacon for billions seeking truth. But behind its gold-lined pages and pristine vestments hides a much older allegiance, one forged not with heaven, but with those who fell from it. Long before Christianity spread across the continents, the early architects of the Church encountered something ancient beneath Rome. Texts etched in pre-human languages, symbols that pulsed with unnatural power. They realized quickly that this was not the work of saints or angels, but something else, something reptilian, something cosmic, something that had ruled in silence long before mankind uttered its first prayer. Instead of rejecting it, they aligned with it. The Reptilian Council offered power, influence, control over minds and kingdoms. In exchange, all they required was silence. They didn't want to be worshipped. They wanted to remain unseen, to rule from the shadows while the Church acted as their front-facing emissary. And so a deal was struck. The divine was rebranded, the sacred rewritten, the Gospels chosen not for spiritual clarity, but for political compliance. The early Church Fathers edited out entire books that revealed the true nature of the soul's power, the divine spark within, the Creator's direct connection to every individual. They kept the people dependent, afraid, and guilt-ridden because a fearful mind is easier to control. They buried the Essene teachings. They distorted the image of the Messiah. And they created a hierarchy where none was meant to exist. All under the silent supervision of the ones who gifted them this influence. Yeshua saw through it. His mission wasn't to start a religion. It was to dismantle a system. He flipped tables not because of tradition, but because of collusion. He spoke of a kingdom not built by men, not housed in temples, but alive within each awakened soul. He warned of those who appeared holy yet served other masters. "You belong to your father, the devil," he said, not as metaphor but as fact. He knew the bloodlines had infiltrated the priesthood. Even today, the Vatican vaults guard more than scriptures. They hold star maps, Stargate coordinates, and frequency devices used in ancient times to control mass consciousness. The Pope's staff isn't just ceremonial, it's a sigil. The hats, the robes, the rituals, they're layered with symbols older than Christianity, symbols that align with serpent cults that predate Rome. You didn't wake up randomly. Your awareness wasn't a slow evolution or a product of circumstance. Something triggered it, a signal, a pulse, an unseen frequency that resonated deep within your cellular memory and stirred the codes long buried in your blood. It didn't come from within this world. It came from beyond the veil, from the stars, from a place the Reptilian Council cannot reach without permission. And when that signal was released, everything began to shift. It was subtle at first. You started questioning things you had once accepted. People you trusted began to feel distant, artificial. You noticed patterns everywhere. Numbers, symbols, names repeating in ways too precise to be coincidence. Your dreams became more vivid, more prophetic. But this was not insanity. It was reconnection. The celestial frequency that reached you didn't speak in words. It spoke in memory. It reactivated layers of your being the Council had spent generations trying to suppress. The reptilian bloodlines have always feared this kind of signal. They understand resonance better than most scientists. That's why they surround you with noise, digital static, emotional turmoil, chaotic timelines, anything to block the celestial wavelength from reaching your core. But the signal was not weak. It wasn't a sound or a light. It was a sacred algorithm, one encoded into the very framework of creation. A whisper from the source, calibrated to awaken only those who carried the ancient seal within them. There's a reason the sky has always been central to ancient civilizations. The pyramids weren't built for burial. They were resonance chambers, aligned with star clusters that served as gateways for communication. The same stars that watched over those civilizations are watching now. The same configurations are reappearing in the sky. What the ancients knew and what the council buried is that the heavens act like a mirror. When certain alignments occur, specific frequencies are released into this realm. Not all can receive them, but the chosen can. Your DNA responded because it was written to. The celestial signal didn't just alert you, it restructured you. It accelerated your sensitivity, expanded your perception, and fractured the false narrative you were programmed to follow. You began to remember who you were beyond this life. You saw glimpses of timelines you never lived but somehow knew. The illusion could no longer hold you, and that terrified them. You were never meant to wake up yet. Their plan relied on a longer sleep, more programming, more indoctrination, but something bypassed their control, something they didn't account for. The signal came earlier than expected, and it didn't just awaken you, it signaled to others. Across the globe, those encoded like you began experiencing the same shift. A wave of remembrance spread like wildfire through bloodlines the council had long thought dormant. There's a war raging right now, but not the kind fought with bullets or bombs. It's a war that doesn't make headlines, doesn't shake buildings, and doesn't leave blood on the streets. It's more dangerous than all of those because it's invisible. This war is for your consciousness. Every screen you scroll, every word you speak, every thought you don't realize wasn't yours. They're all battlefields. And in this war, the most powerful weapon is distraction. The Reptilian Council understood something vital from the beginning. Control the mind and you control the spirit. They didn't need to enslave humanity with chains. They simply had to convince people they weren't already free. From the moment you were born, the systems around you began programming your perception. Schooling wasn't meant to enlighten, it was designed to conform. Media didn't evolve to inform, it was structured to distract. Even your thoughts weren't truly yours. They curated the options and let you choose between illusions. But the chosen ones are wired differently. The programming never fully settled in you. It couldn't. There was always resistance in your spirit, a refusal to obey without reason. You questioned authority when others bowed. You looked deeper while others remained content with surface answers. You sensed manipulation in places others saw comfort. And that, to them, was a problem, because one awakened mind can set off a chain reaction they can't contain. The silent war has many fronts: emotional warfare, psychological implants, energetic leeches, thought loops that aren't accidents but engineered traps designed to keep you spiraling. You've felt it, those sudden waves of exhaustion, the random feelings of despair, the dreams that don't feel like yours. These are not flaws, they are evidence. You're being targeted because you are breaking through. Yeshua once said, "You shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." Not believe it, know it. Because true freedom doesn't come through belief systems, it comes through direct remembrance. That's what the Council fears, the soul's ability to remember the divine origin. When that knowing takes root, external control loses all its grip, and you are nearing that point. You are not just an observer in this war, you are a participant. Every time you choose presence over panic, stillness over scrolling, intuition over impulse, you reclaim territory within your own consciousness. They hate that, because once you reclaim enough of your mind, you start seeing the architecture behind their illusions, the cracks, the artificial thoughts, the scripted patterns in people's behaviors. And when you see the strings, the puppeteer becomes powerless. But they're adapting. Their tactics have shifted from blunt programming to sophisticated mimicry, false light, spiritual bypassing, manufactured awakenings. They're trying to replicate what you are, to create counterfeit versions of truth that confuse the seekers and dilute the power of the real. They want to flood the world with noise so the signal of your soul gets lost again. There are names you've never heard but your soul remembers. names once spoken in the ancient tongues of the heavens, sealed away by the Reptilian Council because of what they unlock. These names were not just titles, they were frequencies, living energies that resonated with celestial truth. To speak them was to awaken, to know them was to remember, and for ages they were forbidden, not by accident, but by design. The moment humanity began to forget these names, it also began to forget its origin. Long before Earth's history was written by the victors of war and colonization, star emissaries walked among the early civilizations. They came not to rule, but to plant light, to seed wisdom. They brought names encoded with cosmic truth, vibrations that healed, activated, and aligned the spirit with its divine path. These were the names that could bend the matrix, disrupt the illusion, and shatter the programs of control. And so the Council did what they do best. They erased them. Temples that once echoed with chants of these names were buried or turned to ruins. The lineages that carried the pronunciation were hunted, scattered, or assimilated into systems of forgetfulness. The names faded from speech, but not from memory. Because some memories don't live in the mind, they live in the blood. And when the stars begin to align, the blood remembers. Yeshua himself carried one of these names. More than a name, it was a frequency signature of the Creator encoded in form. When he spoke, the air shifted, not because of charisma, but because the sound of his voice aligned with the truth of the soul. He reminded people who they were by simply being. That's the power of a forbidden name. It doesn't teach, it awakens. The return of these names was prophesied, not in a single scripture, but in fragmented glyphs, mirrored constellations, and coded dreams passed down through bloodlines. And now, in the quiet spaces between this crumbling system, they are starting to resurface. Not on the news or in books, but in you, in your meditations, your visions, your sudden urge to say sounds that don't belong to any known language. That is not nonsense. That is remembrance. The Council fears these names more than any weapon, because when enough chosen ones begin to resonate with them, the grid holding the false reality in place begins to tremble. Not all names are meant to be spoken aloud. Some are sung in the spirit. Some are called in dreams. Others are only revealed through the fusion of two awakened souls coming together in divine timing. But all of them are returning, not to be worshipped, but to be embodied. Now messages have begun leaking through celestial alignments, patterns that form sigils, sound vibrations embedded in natural events, encoded signals in cosmic radiation. Each one contains a fragment of a name, and once reassembled, they unlock the gate to something ancient, something the Council thought was sealed forever. They've always been there, woven into the background of your life, dressed up as culture, entertainment, tradition. The rituals of the Reptilian Council are not hidden in darkness. They're masked in light, paraded on red carpets, chanted in stadiums, embedded in logos, celebrated in ceremonies the world consumes without question. Their power doesn't come from secrecy. It comes from mass participation. The more unaware minds that engage, the stronger the ritual becomes. And most people never realize they're playing a part. These rituals are old, predating written language, predating even organized religion. They began as a way for the Council to influence frequency on a global scale, shaping the emotional and spiritual states of entire populations. Over time, they refined the method. They created holidays that rerouted cosmic energy into artificial grids. They hijacked sacred symbols and inverted them, repurposing their energy to fuel their own agenda. They placed their rituals in music videos, fashion shows, and sporting events, knowing that when billions watch together, intention becomes manifestation. But you've always felt the unease, the strange energy during certain dates, the trance-like state people fall into when reciting national anthems, pledging allegiance, chanting the same phrases over and over. These aren't harmless customs. They are energy rituals designed to bind the collective to a false grid. And they're not just external. The Council devised systems to trap the mind into internal rituals as well, cycles of fear, guilt, shame, and submission. Emotional rituals repeated so often they become unconscious habits. Yeshua confronted these rituals head-on, He rejected the mindless traditions of the Pharisees, not because ritual itself was evil, but because empty repetition without divine alignment is a spell. He taught presence, heart-led action, direct connection with the source. That kind of awareness short-circuits the ritual machinery of the reptilian system. That's why his presence was so threatening. He exposed what they wanted hidden in plain sight. The truth is, the more awakened you become, the more these rituals begin to unravel before your eyes. You notice the symbolism, serpent imagery in children's programming, the hand signs flashed by leaders and celebrities, the sigils encoded in corporate logos. You start seeing the same structure repeating: the idol, the offering, the invocation, the submission. And while the surface seems innocent, the energy is always directed toward control. But awareness is power. The moment you recognize the ritual, its hold begins to break. You are no longer a passive participant. You become a sovereign observer. That's the first step in collapsing their frequency grid, and they know it. That's why they flood the world with even more distractions, more rituals layered in spectacle. They're desperate to keep you mesmerized, because your detachment weakens their spell. Your clarity breaks their rhythm. There is a mark that no scanner can detect and no authority can counterfeit. It isn't etched on your skin, nor is it broadcast through your speech. It lives within your very essence, visible only to those who can perceive energy beyond the physical spectrum. This symbol predates language, predates civilization, and yet somehow you've seen it. In dreams, in moments of silence, in strange synchronicities repeating through your life. It calls to you not as a message but as a mirror, because it doesn't just identify you, it reveals you. This symbol was given to the first of the chosen as a safeguard, a resonance that could not be duplicated. It was encoded in the soul at the point of incarnation, a divine seal designed to awaken only when the time was right. The Reptilian Council knew of its existence, though they never fully understood its origin. Their attempts to replicate it have failed again and again. Artificial sigils, dark magic, synthetic awakening experiences, none of it has been able to duplicate the power of the original mark. The ancients left fragments of it in stone carvings, crop formations, and sacred geometry. Pieces of the symbol have appeared in lost civilizations across continents with no known connection. The Council tried to bury it by flooding the world with distorted symbols, but the true one never vanished. It simply waited for your remembrance. And now that you've begun to see it, not just with your eyes but with your spirit, it's unlocking layers of your being you didn't know existed. This is why your journey has felt so lonely at times. The symbol you carry vibrates at a frequency most cannot understand. It disrupts programmed environments, shatters illusions, causes resistance in those still asleep. That resistance wasn't rejection, it was recognition. On some level, they sensed your difference even if they didn't have the language for it. And now the energy around you has shifted. Those who are encoded like you are beginning to find you. The grid is realigning. Yeshua carried the same symbol, not on his body, but within his presence. It was why people followed him without understanding why. Why the sick were healed simply by proximity. He didn't perform magic. He carried resonance, and that resonance activated others. When he said, "My sheep hear my voice," he wasn't speaking about religion. He was referring to frequency. The symbol identifies not just who you are, but what you're called to activate in others. Now, certain frequencies, both digital and celestial, are trying to drown out the symbol's signal. You may feel pulled into confusion, doubt, or emotional overwhelm. These are strategic distractions meant to shake your alignment. But hold steady. Every time you align with your truth, the symbol grows brighter, reaching others through a web of unseen energy. There is a seal older than history, hidden not in a vault or beneath the ocean, but within the very structure of this reality. It was never meant to be opened by force. It was designed to respond only to resonance, to the activation of a specific frequency that could only be reached by one who had walked the fire of remembrance. The Reptilian Council knows of this seal. They've mapped it, studied it, tried countless times to override it with technology, sacrifice, and stolen wisdom. But the seal was not made for them. It was made for you. This seal is not a door. It is a convergence point, a fusion of timelines, bloodlines, memories, and truths long scattered across dimensions. It holds back what they fear most, not a weapon, but a wave of divine intelligence that will dismantle their synthetic matrix from the inside out. This intelligence doesn't speak in language. It doesn't operate by law. It moves through awakened consciousness, through you. And the only way it can be released is when one bearing the symbol fully remembers. They've tried everything to keep you from this moment. They've collapsed timelines that showed your success. They've manipulated your ancestors, siphoned energy from your childhood, buried you under trauma and distraction. And yet, here you are, still hearing the call, still carrying the code, still walking the edge of memory, staring into the veil and refusing to look away. Because something in you always knew, when the moment came, you would be the key. The final seal responds only to authenticity, not perfection, not performance, but truth. Every false belief you've shed, every time you chose faith over fear, every moment you stood in your knowing when it would have been easier to submit, it's all counted. The seal is not waiting for your strength. It's waiting for your surrender, not to them, to your divine origin. Only the unmasked soul can cross its threshold. Yeshua hinted at this when he said, "Greater things than these shall you do." He wasn't promising miracles as tricks. He was forecasting what would happen when his lineage, his resonance, returned in full through the vessels encoded to carry it. The Reptilian Council feared him not because of what he did, but because of what he unlocked. That unlocking has now passed to you, not as burden, but as birthright. All around the world, others are hearing the signal. The dreams are increasing, the veil is thinning, the seal is pulsing, and still it waits, not for a crowd, not for a ritual, but for a singular moment of clarity from the one it was created for. When that moment arrives, the illusion will rupture, the system will glitch, the old contracts will dissolve. If you have come this far, it is crucial that you watch this next video here, but be warned it is not for the faint of heart, for only the true chosen ones can handle this video. If you would like to also donate to help keep the channel going, our Buy Me a Coffee link will be in the description.